This VAWatchdog.org news video is brought to you by Bergman & Moore, LLC. Former VA attorneys now fighting VA for you. Call Bergman & Moore at 877-838-2889 or on the web at vetlawyers.com.
He hired someone new and tried to persuade Middleton to sign this contract, demoting him to deputy chief.
Well, he had said it was because I was in the military, and he wanted somebody there who was there all the time.
But can you understand that?
No. I mean, I've given that city 12 years.
But you were gone a total of 2.5 years.
Correct.
He felt he had the law on his side, so he refused to sign the contract. And when he returned home, he still had the title, police chief, at the same pay. But he was forced to report to the new director of public safety, who had moved into the chief's office. And now you are his number 2.
Correct, and he's going to give me guidance on how to run the police department that I had run for 12 years.
Do you think the lack of support for this war has anything to do with it?
Sherwood's very supportive of the war as long as it doesn't affect their city and how it runs. It's very easy to say I support the troops, but it's very hard to be without one of those troops for a long period of time. And there's a lot of guys over there sacrificing an awful lot. And they really need to feel like they're being supported and they have their job when they come back.
Middleton has filed a lawsuit claiming his rights under the USERRA law to the same job with the same status were violated. He's seeking $1 million in damages. What do you think that the employers are really most worried about?
About us having to go again, because that was one of the things I was asked. What are your chances of you leaving again? And they said, I'm still in the military.
Chances are pretty good.
I mean, we're at war. Chances are great that I will have to leave again.
And that's what happened. Nurse Joanne Merritt is now on her second tour, and so is Jeff Vineyard, the Conway driver. He's back in Iraq after less than 3 years at home in between. Employers, both public and private, seemed to accept the arrangement at first. They wanted to support the troops. But now at the repeated deployments, the realization that this isn't going to stop, some companies are trying to avoid reservists altogether. Ted Daywalt, president of VetJobs.com, that helps military people find jobs, says he knows companies that simply refuse to hire them.
I had one senior VP of HR tell me that if I had 3 candidates for a senior position in the company, and one of them mentioned they're in the Guard and Reserve, he would only have 2 candidates left. And I said, you know, that's illegal. His response was, I can always find a reason why not to hire somebody.
And how much is that happening now?
I think it's happening a lot.
You can't prove it.
You can prove it to a point. There were surveys done that shows that upwards of 70% of the employers won't hire a person who's active in the Guard and Reserve.
Dave Miller of Conway says he wants to continue hiring them. He likes their discipline and willingness to work long hours. But he and other executives are agitating for compensation.
If the military is going to take our people 30% of the time, let them pay 30% of the health care costs.
Now, does the government give you any help, any tax breaks or anything like that?
Leslie, the answer to that is absolutely no.
Nothing?
Nothing. We have gone and petitioned Congress to, in fact, provide tax incentives for companies to do the right thing for these citizen soldiers.
And what's the response?
They're still discussing it.
A tax break to help very small businesses became law in June. But Miller says the cost to all companies will go up since the Pentagon has announced a new policy of calling up the National Guard and Reserves on a regular basis every 5 years, even after the current wars are over. In using the Guard and the Reservists this way, in other words, for regular deployments, the charge is that you're just doing it to save money. And you're doing it on the back of these employers.
I think it's the most appropriate use of America's forces. We have 2.6 million people under arms. 1.4 million are in the active duty. 1.2 are in the Guard and Reserve, 45% of the military. And what we do is we save money actually by that because the Guardsman Reservist doesn't cost as much. So I think it's an appropriate use of the total force.
If the Department of Defense is going to rely more heavily on reserve and guard, they should take into consideration all they're doing is shifting cost at that point in time. And there are those of us that probably won't accept that shifting graciously, at least silently. We won't accept it silently.
He and his fellow businessmen will have a hard time getting government help in this era of big deficits. The Pentagon is making other concessions, though. They're reducing the length of each deployment to just 1 year, and call-up notices are going out anywhere from 6 to 20 months in advance.
Good to see you. How's troops doing? Fantastic.
Secretary Hall, who recently visited reservists on duty in Kuwait, says he hears what the companies are saying. But his priority is the troops and their job security. He expects the USERA law to be enforced, which is why he made this astonishing offer.
Let me make this commitment right on the air, if I could, just for a moment. If there's any guardsman or reservist or family member out that has a problem, call my office. Call me personally. I will personally ensure.
What's your number?
My number is 703-697-6631. And I will ensure that I put a caseworker on it. If necessary, I will call the head of the company or the agency personally. I don't just make that offer just precipitously. I mean that, because we're concerned about it. My office will react, and I invite people, if they have a problem, tell me.
VAWatchdog.org, the nation's #1 independent veterans website. On the web at VAWatchdog.org.